But I, of course, experimented with many other things before I landed. You must be knowing that because you'll be known as this cool RJ.
Your shadow can be a huge villain in your life, actually, if you don't, encounter that and move forward with it. The doctor-patient confidentiality. Welcome to Midweek Mind Check. My name is Lee, and this is Good Morning Bangalore. Right now, I have Deepti Chandy in the studios, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Anna Chandy and Associates, a therapy practice. How are you doing, Deepti? Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, Lee?
Doing well myself. I'm so glad you came today and spoke to me more about this. We're talking about identity issues, and how this relates to everybody, and how we can find a sense of comfort with ourselves, right? So before I start, tell me more about yourself and how you got into the entire practice of therapy.
So I think my mom was a therapist, so I was always exposed to therapy, but I didn't really embrace it till I went through a personal struggle with a skin issue when I was 19. And then this space provided me so much that I was like, oh my God, I need to know how to do this, and I want to give this back, and this is the work I want to be doing. But I, of course, experimented with many other things before I landed back in this.
In therapy and
right. Being a therapist. But no regrets, and I love every moment.
Lovely. So let's get into the questions this morning. Question number one is, how does one's sense of identity contribute to the overall mental health and well-being of a person?
I really like the question. I think identity is so important today, Lee. And I think it sort of forms the cornerstone of our mental health.
Right.
For two reasons. One is because we get so much of validation, both self-validation internally as well as externally. For example, today when you go somewhere, the first question someone would ask you is, what do you do? Because that professional identity gives you so much of validation.
For sure.
And you must be knowing that because you'll be known as this cool RJ.
Not cool, but yeah.
So that gives us a lot.
Yes.
And for us, for our well-being, we need validation as human beings. We both need a combination of self-validation and external validation. So I think identity forms that cornerstone, that base on which our mental health sort of functions around. And a lot of the clients, it's one of my favorite issues in therapy, because I think it's so empowering once you actually figure out what that identity is and work on it. And that's what I work with a lot of clients on, irrespective of age group.
Okay. So you always, this is one of the things you talked to them about. Interesting. My other question is, what are some of the challenges or obstacles that people face when it comes to self-development and building a strong sense of their identity? Because I'm sure when I started my entire journey as an RJ, I had trouble figuring out who I am as a person, my personality, what I do on air, how do I talk to people outside. And after a while, you sort of get used to it. But in the beginning, it was so hard. So how do you go about this?
I think one thing is a lot of your audience is in their 20s, and I think in your 20s you're actually searching. You're no longer a teenager. You're not really a young adult. You're more in that adult category. So that itself, you're wondering, you're adulting, you're learning. So that causes a lot of confusion. But there are also things around okay, if this is what I want my identity to be, then I'm discarding an old narrative. So people are afraid of, okay, I used to be that guy, now I'm this guy. Can I be this guy? The second is, there's a lot of judgment around identity. That if I embrace this, what will people think? And I think in our culture today, we all focus a lot on, what the optics are. So people are always looking for, what am I projecting? And that could be at a clash with what your personal identity is.
Really?
And I think the fourth thing is that what really happens is sometimes we ourselves have a very critical inner voice. We all have that voice in our head.
Definitely.
And sometimes that's very critical. So when we are always judging ourselves, we are always, that becomes an obstacle as well.
I think you're so right about that, because you said discarding no narrative, right? That happened to me as well. So people knew me as Ali for the longest time, and then I chose the on-air persona as Lee. Only a few people knew me as Lee. So then I flipped it. I was like, everyone knows me as Lee now, and only a few people know me as Ali. And I had to become Lee, not the old person I was. So discarding and sort of shedding that skin and becoming a new person is quite challenging, actually. And touch wood, it's going well for me. Hopefully I navigate in certain way. But it is hard for people as well, right? So how can one person navigate the process of self-discovery and self-acceptance while managing mental health challenges?
So I think what I first want to say is, and thank you for sharing your own personal narrative, because I think that's always helpful both for your listeners and in general. One thing to first accept is that you and I, in today's world, we all have mental health challenges. That itself is okay. I think we're living in a very fast-paced world. We don't say this enough, and it's really, really hard to keep up. So that itself is okay. Have that self-acceptance that it's okay. The second thing is, I would like to employ that critical voice part again, because we always judge ourselves before other people judge us. So while navigating this, we are already judging ourselves, and that can again become a challenge, when you're actually trying to overcome mental health challenges and find your identity, etc. I would say find a safe space, work with a therapist to help you process this. Where we all go to experts when we need, and this is just another space where you can explore. You don't have to do it alone. You can have someone holding your hand, and you don't have to have an extreme mental health issue that you have to go and explore this. I would encourage everyone to do that in a safe space. There's nothing like it. And I think don't have any expectations. This is who I should be. Let it be sort of more organic, so that you're embracing each part. Do I like this? Do I not like this? And you get to choose which part you would like to discard. That part is great. May not be black and white, but embrace that as it comes on.
Sometimes I feel like even embracing the bad parts about you, or like the parts that you don't like too much, is also important. It's also a huge part of self-acceptance, right?
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you're having this conversation, and you seem so clued in and checked in with the subject. It's so refreshing. Yes, because what you say is like the bad part, or what we call in this language the shadow self. That is, it's gray. There's no, I tell clients all the time in therapy, it's not about black and white, it's about the gray as well, and let's embrace that gray. And this is not about morality.
Right, exactly. It's not morality.
No, it's not.
It's completely different. And sometimes if you don't accept your shadow, it can come and bite you in the back. Your shadow can be a huge villain in your life, actually, if you don't encounter that and move forward with it. And
what you reject in yourself is then what you have issues with other people as well.
Yes, and that's a very, they don't realize that actually. It's it's like a two-way street. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
My next question is, are there any particular theories or models of identity development that you find helpful in understanding and working with clients?
Absolutely. So my whole thought process, or the way I work with clients, is, if I can use the analogy of teaching someone to fish rather than giving them a fish.
Okay.
So I think when I work with clients, I really like to help them build resources. I'm always available, but how can we work together to build resources that you can be available to yourself as well? And I think that's hugely empowering. Having said that, the type of psychology that I practice is called transactional analysis.
Okay.
And I think that's a beautiful framework that helps. So even my clients are able to understand. If I can give you a quick example.
Please do.
It believes that we all operate from 3 primary ego states: the parent ego state, the adult ego state, and the child ego state.
Okay.
So the parent is all those messages you received from your parent, like your mom or dad, or a primary caregiver, which also happens in our country. So things like, women must be treated like this, elders should be respected. All of those messages are stored in your parent ego state. It's from the past. Adult is how we're interacting now, in the here and now. We're exchanging input. And our child ego state is where our fears, it's like seeing a little Lee. Our fears, our anxiety, love, all of that comes from our child ego state.
Okay.
Now, when I explain this framework, say I explain it to you, and today we're interacting and I say something parental, or if I'm judging someone, then my client is also able to understand, hey, now I'm in my parent ego state. I'm being, for example, in relationships, one partner can tend to become very, very judgy of the other.
Right.
You didn't do it like this. And then the other person goes into child because they feel they're being, chastised or discounted or something, and they respond from a child ego state as
Right.
though they would to a parent. And that's where the friction starts. So when I explain this, rather than working through it without explaining, a client can say, hey, Deepti, last time I was in my parent ego state. Oh, that's what I think I'm in my child now. I'm feeling very anxious. So then they are also able to sort of place it, where am I coming from, where am I operating from. So I think these kind of frameworks are very, very helpful. And I also work with the Rogerian school which is, be empathetic, unconditional positive regard. All of these things are very important to
When
this
you mentioned the last part, what was it?
unconditional positive regard.
So what is that exactly? Can you explain that to me?
So whatever my client brings in,
Mhm.
I'm going to treat them with unconditional positive regard, because this is a non-judgmental
Space, yes.
space.
You're right.
So I'm going to give them the space. I'm going to be empathetic. I'm going to give them also unconditional positive regard where they feel safe enough. So even if it's something moral that's wrong, we're going to see where did that come from. I'm not sitting judging you.
Right. That's amazing. That's I think not even know that, right? They're not sure that okay, this is a safe space, and they also forget about the doctor-patient confidentiality. That none of this can be said to anybody in no form or fashion. As long as I think if you're talking about harming somebody else
Or yourself.
that's the only way they can talk to somebody else. But apart from that, it's legally binding.
Yeah,
That
you should be an
entire
advocate for therapy.
That's the point. That's why I'm doing this. I want to thank you once again for coming down and talking to me about this morning. Deepti Chandy in the studios. Thank you so much, Deepti. Have a nice day.
You too. Thank you so much.